Welcome to the Get a Life podcast. Explore survivor stories. Uncover the hidden truths. Join our X-Cult conversations. You matter, and so does your story.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Get a Life podcast. I am Cheryl Hope, and today with me is Andrea Becker. And our very special guest today is Dawson Ching. We are all former members of the exclusive brethren, now known as the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. Dawson joined us previously on podcast 146 to talk about his experiences growing up inside the PBCC. And judging by the reaction to that episode, some people didn't take it particularly well. In fact, to our listeners in Switzerland connected to the PBCC, you might have noticed Dawson's first episode mysteriously isn't viewable there on YouTube anymore. But don't worry, it's still available across all the other platforms. So before we begin, a small request to the PBCC in Switzerland. Please go and put on your big boy knickers and try listening this time instead of immediately going into defense mode. These subjects we are discussing are important. Because today is part 2 and we have a lot to cover. We had multiple requests for Dawson to return, so here we are. We're going to dive deeper into Dawson's life growing up inside the cult, including his experience attending the OneSchool Global, what school was really like inside the PBCC, and the reality of growing up as a teenager in a world with no music, no television, and almost no contact with the outside world, and constant pressure to conform. We'll also talk about the culture inside the group, including racism, homophobia, and the ways different cultures and identities are treated within the PBCC community. Then Dawson is going to share some truly unbelievable stories about what happens when the church's global leader, Bruce Hales, comes to town, including events surrounding Zurich and the kind of authority exercised over members' lives and businesses. And finally, we'll talk about Dawson's life after leaving, the challenges, the freedom of finally being able to live openly as a gay man, building friendships outside the cult, pursuing education and music, and the reality of rebuilding a life after growing up in such a controlled environment. And most importantly, Dawson will share some advice for young people who may still be inside and quietly wondering if there's a life beyond it. So Dawson, welcome back to the show. I am going to hand it right over to you. What was it like going to the OSG school?
Thanks so much, Cheryl, and thanks for having me back. So I want to dive in straight into the beginning of my experience at OSG. I was taken out of the public school, so outside of the cult at the age of 13. It was quite a big school, I'd say, around 300 students, and I was put straight into the OSG school, which in total there were 3 other students, so there was just 4 of us. And our school wasn't even a building, it was just a room. So we had maybe 20 square meters of space for the 4 of us. The 4 of us being me, my elder sister, and 2 other kids from the cult. And so that was the first year, and I would describe it as a very, very challenging culture shock in that sense, coming from such a big school and being put into a very small and controlled environment where you're mostly having one-to-one sessions with your teacher. And so, as we all know, the OneSchool Global struggles to find funding. So I spent most of my OneSchool years doing schooling with outside countries. So, for example, schools in England or in Germany over virtual conference. So the teachers and the other classes were on the other end, and I was sitting on my own in front of a big screen. So that was mostly the reality of being a OneSchool student for me. And we never really followed any particular curriculum as such. So in my case, I was more of I'd like to describe it as a guinea pig. So they tested various different schooling systems or curriculum, how should I say, materials to teach me, right? And the teachers we had, they were from near and far and didn't really know exactly what direction the school was trying to send us in, I guess, because they were also very foggy as to what they were supposed to teach us exactly, and what the goals were that we were striving for. Because at the end of the 5 years I spent at OneSchool Global, there were no exams as such to leave school with a particular degree in a certain subject, right? So they're basically like, okay, well, we have to have our own school within the cult. What do we do? So I guess behind the scenes, there's what they call trustees, which is a bunch of older men who think they know a schooling system. They think they know how it should run, what the children should be doing, what they should be learning, and just putting it out there, they had no fucking idea what they were doing. So
They're just literally just winging it.
Yeah, it was a trial run.
Yeah.
So they would, go into a library, find this book or find this curriculum online and be like, okay, well, they should study this, and hand by us these books, of which most of the pages of some of the books were then either cut out or stuck together because they had topics such as sex education, or novels that we had to read for English had the romance parts cut out. So it was all very, very controlled as to, firstly, as to what we could learn, what we could dive into, and what topics.
Can we just talk about the topics, Dawson? So like in a normal school, I've got my daughter goes to normal public school, right? And they have so many subjects. So like about how many subjects did you study in there? Was there 4, 5, 10?
Yeah, there was roughly around, I would say, between 7 and 10 different subjects. So we'd have all the classics, the English, mathematics, German, geography, history, French, and so on.
But there wouldn't be like, sport, join a football team, or, like you said, sex ed, or how to be smart online, or, social studies like that. And it sounds like you were pretty isolated too, like literally sitting in front of a screen all day. So that's like super isolating for a young kid.
Absolutely. Very, very isolating. And on that point, I would say that's where I struggled with bullying a lot, because you were always the outsider. You were always this strange kid from a foreign country that was on the other side of the screen. We never really had much interaction with them. You can see them all having fun in front of you in a big classroom, and you're stuck on the other side on your own. So what tends to happen in situations like that is you don't learn, because you're so overwhelmed with the situation that you're on your own and it's your own fight, that you just feel like a dropout. Do you know what I mean? Like you don't feel like you're part of a school. And I remember the end of my first year at school, I kind of exploded, because our secretary, she was also part of the Brethren, and it just became too overwhelming. I'd come from this huge school, put in this small one, no social life. What do you talk about all day, every day, except gossip about the Brethren? And then you get to hear from your secretary, this person did that, that person did that, your family does this, your family does this. And as a 13-year-old child, I was so overwhelmed with the situation that I just lost my shit. And I remember going off at her and saying, like, this isn't normal. Like, why are you against the teachers? Why are you against my family? You don't even know what you're supposed to be doing here. Like, what is wrong with this school? I had no idea with the situation I was in. I wasn't aware of what was happening and why I was feeling that way, because it wasn't I wasn't in a professional schooling system, right? I was overwhelmed with not being in the same kind of circumstance that I was in before. And as a child especially as a child with learning disabilities, and you're thrown into the situation where you don't receive any support whatsoever on your studies and your learning difficulties, it was very hard, because you were comparing yourself to the other children. My sister, 3 years older, in a completely different level of education. The other boy who was there, a year older, the other girl who was a year younger. So you don't really find your place within the school, right?
And part of high school too, like, is so social. It's so learning how to balance who you are with other people, and getting used to other people, other personalities, and where you were from, Zurich being such an isolated place anyway, an isolated meeting with small amount of people, like you say, the gossip from the brethren, from the secretary was overwhelming what you should actually have been there doing, but you didn't have enough social stimulation at school to be able to focus on learning.
Absolutely.
And that's like so cruel and unfair to kids to take them out of social situations, and they don't know how to learn. And I mean, might I say, you've done extremely well. You can socialize like a boss now, but it's
right?
it's not fair, it's really not fair. But it's such a big part of school.
No, it's not just the gossip that happens within school, right? You go back home, you go to the meeting, you go out for dinner on a Sunday, and you get to hear all this gossip about the families within Zurich, and some of those families, their children were in school with me, and it was so hard to maintain a good relationship and not be biased or have like negative thoughts about that child when you'd heard all this shit from other people in the cult. And I remember finding that so difficult to knowing that I had to keep a good relationship with these kids, because otherwise my school life would be hell, as well as my home life, as well as my social church life, right? So you had to try and kind of balance it all and not pick sides when you heard negative stuff about the others.
And I think this is something that we've really brought up in our podcast with teachers that have come onto the podcast, is it's when the parents are talking about, children that you're going to school with in their own home. But here you have an actual secretary that is a PBCC member that is doing that. So when you brought this up to her, what kind of support did she listen to you? Did she change her ways, or did it continue on?
No, it continued on. I'd have to say, in fairness to her, she lost her husband during that year, and she had no children of her own, right? So I guess it was a very hard year for her anyway.
It doesn't excuse talking like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, we all go through hard times, and it's in those times where you have reflection, you rely on support. So she should have understood if she wasn't in a cult, she would have had the tools to understand and be able to see that the support you were needing was also the support she was needing, right? That's what happens in a world it's outside of a cult, is you recognize when someone is struggling, and instead of adding fuel to the fire, you become a source of resource. You become a source for both people that are in this situation. One of the things I want to ask you is, when you were in school, did they have something called OSG Aware?
No, we didn't. Back then, it wasn't called it was called OneSchool Global, but it was a completely different system in that sense as to what they have nowadays. Yeah.
They have, there's a new program that's just been rolling out. It's rolling out in April. I mean, they've had OSG Aware for a bit, but I have had many insiders reach out to me, and other ex-members that have had insiders reach out to them about this program that's starting in April. And it's called OSG Aware, where they are doing classes for the kids for the different grades on sexual abuse, bullying, arranged marriages is in there. There's all these things that are starting to roll out. And I guess my question to the PBCC is, do you have the person that is teaching these, are they qualified? Because it's being very secretive about who's actually teaching this, what is being taught. I've heard parents are not allowed to go to this, or parents are wanting to go to this. So I think it's super important that if you are rolling out a safeguarding program, that the brethren don't have anything to do with it. It needs to be someone outside of the school, completely unassociated with the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church and unassociated with OneSchool Global, to be able to roll out something like this. And you need someone who is completely qualified in trauma-informed spaces, because inside your classrooms are going to be children who have been sexually abused and are currently being sexually abused. So when you roll out a program without a trauma-informed space, you're going to have many issues on your hands. including things that could eventually develop into suicide, extreme mental health problems. You have to watch when you are rolling things out like this, that it is people that are qualified to do this. And yes, the parents should be allowed to come into this. So I guess that's just my urgent plea to the PBCC and the OneSchool Global is do not be doing this with someone that you've just, a staff member that maybe taken an interest in this. It has to be someone who is qualified to be delivering classes like this. You cannot be doing it yourself or somebody who is not qualified. And if I do find out that it's somebody that was unqualified, I will be reporting it to authorities. There will be many people reporting it to authorities. You need to get your ducks in a row and make sure that you are handling this the way that it needs to be handled.
And to support what Cheryl says, I have a kid in high school, in public high school. We were informed of, as you say, class about sexual abuse. The teacher, we got an email saying who was running the class. We could check their qualifications. The teachers were all invited to an evening, the parents, to hear about it first before their kids heard about it, so that the parents were equally informed of what the kids were going to be hearing and learning, and to be aware if their child comes to them with anything, to be prepared for that.
But
can you imagine them trying to put a kid in a class and you don't know who it's going to be taught by?
Ridiculous.
It's probably some priest that's read Bruce Hales's ministry or John Hales's ministry or some of these great men, and they say these things, and all it's going to do, it may raise awareness slightly, but it may also push kids deeper and deeper into shame and hide it even more.
Yes. That's my concern, is that these kids are sitting there, and especially if it's someone who is suffering from one of these things, it's very dangerous to do something like that.
No, I was just saying, especially if it's someone from the cult, it's probably like someone who's a abuser himself. I mean, what goes on behind closed doors, no one knows, and they would never admit it. And from what we've done our research on it, we all know that most of those like higher up men in the cult are abusers. So who they would think as respectful elders, but I hate to imagine one of those men trying to teach sex education to a bunch of young girls. It freaks me out.
Yeah, it's so inappropriate.
Somebody qualified. Yeah, they have to have someone
absolutely,
qualified.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it has to be someone who's aware of what goes on within that cult. They need to make the person who's doing that should be aware of what is going on in that cult, so that they can teach the children appropriately.
Yeah.
So Dawson, talking about teachers at the OneSchool Global, did you have any good relationships with teachers there? Were the teachers kind to you? Tell us how they were.
Yeah, so I guess because we were mostly in one-to-one sessions with the teachers, right? We built up good connections with them, and you couldn't stay away from it becoming personal. You couldn't stay away from asking them. I mean, as a young teenager stuck in a cult, you were so inquisitive about the outside world and what was going on in the outside world. So we would ask all these questions.
Well, they're your only contact, aren't they, really, with the outside world?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I remember there's one teacher we built up quite a close connection to. And the parents became very worried about her, and there was a lot of speculation as to, what exactly she was teaching us. But saying that, poor thing, she was told, okay, teach the children this and this subject. We don't have the materials for you. Go out and find your own materials. So she brought her own materials in, which were then taken away at a later date because they had certain subtopics in them. Whatever. I built up quite a close connection with her, and she obviously latched on that I was gay. And we went on a school trip to Hamburg, I think it was, and for a sports day. And she brought up, just quickly on that, I know this now because I've recently reached out to her and we've talked about it, but she reached out to the headmistress of Hamburg and said, about Dawson, I mean, obviously it's quite obvious that he's gay. Like, how do you think he's going to cope with that in this environment that he's in? She shrugged it off and said she doesn't know, and it wasn't for her to worry about. Anyhow, she reported that to the trustees, and a few days later we went back to school and were informed that she'd been fired.
Your teacher?
Wow.
My teacher, yes. We then inquired, we were like, okay, what has she been fired for? And they said, oh, she just didn't fit in anymore. Anyhow, later on, a few years later, I was back in contact with her. I'd reached out to her again because I was thinking of running away, and I was like, I need some contacts on the outside. So I reached out to her again. And at that time, my emails were being monitored, and they discovered that I'd reached out to her. And my priest approached me about it and said, why are you talking to her again? I said, well, there's nothing wrong with her. I don't see anything wrong with her. And he was like, no, there is. She was using alcohol and doing drugs at school, and that's why we fired her. Which, of course, then made me think, oh, she was a crazy person. But now, talking to her, she was like, I told her all this, and she was like, are you for real? I was literally worried about you as a homosexual person within the cult, and I raised my concerns about it. And that's how they basically thanked me for looking out for you. So that just,
they didn't fire her on evidence then. It was just surmising.
That's their narrative. Yeah. Their narrative they always bring up is to do with drugs and all. They project everything that they do onto their secrets are always projected onto everybody else around them. This is so frustrating especially with all the podcasts that are coming out. I get so freaking angry at the fact that is the narrative. Like the amount of things that, we get a lot of trolls from inside there that come in, and that's always their response. Well, do you know you have something to do with this dude and this person? Do you know what they actually did? It was like they were this, they were that, they did drugs, they did alcohol, they had cheated on their wife. And I'm like, you have no idea. But it's the same narrative that they plaster and paint on every situation they don't know how to get out of. Instead of just sitting and listening to what could maybe be potentially a very productive conversation, gets just thrown to the side and labeled with this stamp that everybody has, which is, they've done drugs, they're too into alcohol, they've cheated on their spouse, whatever, blah, 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 gets plastered on it. So this is, that's very defamatory for a teacher, and she could actually do something about that.
But you know what? Maybe they should look in the mirror and look at the person who is consuming alcohol and causing problems within the cult.
Exactly.
Instead of projecting that onto other people for no reason to hide something else up. Like, it's exactly what they're doing. So
yeah, they're guilty of the same thing, and that's all they can think of, rather than thinking it could be an emotional or a psychological issue that we have to deal with. They are so ill-equipped to handle those kinds of things that they tend to throw it back on what they know. And alcohol is a drug, and they abuse that highly, and they cheat on their wives too sometimes. So it's not like they're high and mighty.
Yeah, and as for them, as saying a teacher's consuming alcohol in her workplace and that's why she's being fired, well, should we take a look into the cupboards in the UBT office and other offices of the companies that belong to Brethren? And they're stocked with alcohol, may I add. Every Friday night, not even only Friday nights, but they're always bringing out the coffee. We had one guy in our workplace at work who would add whiskey into his coffee in the morning, which out here, if you did that, you'd be fired on the spot.
Yeah.
We've had teachers come on to this podcast and talk about how they caught students with alcohol in their water bottles, right? See, this is what I'm saying. They project. They don't know how to, they have all these things that land on their lap, and instead of dealing with them, they take it and they just project it onto something that is uncomfortable. And in this case, this teacher trying to stick up for you, realizing you need help. Well, we definitely cannot have that. We cannot have a teacher helping a child, because that does not happen in OSG. We know that through and through. So what is, the teachers obviously talk about like how these teachers disappear overnight. It's just sad. So going forward from that, like after that teacher disappeared, what was it like? Like, did anybody follow up with you on maybe her concerns that were presented? Did anybody come and say like, hey, Dawson, what are you struggling with?
No, it was an absolute taboo topic. And I only found out in the past few years what really happened. And at the time, I had no idea. No one talked to me about it. No one said that this is what has come to someone's attention. Is this true? All that happened around that time is rumors went round that I was gay. At the time there were rumors, and that only increased the bullying, right? And I was so mad that she had been fired, because she was the only real person at school I had a connection with, and I felt like I could unload to her. And I remember crying in her lessons and just being overwhelmed with the situation I was in as a young teenager and not knowing exactly what my future was or what the plan was, right? So it was for me, it was a very dark period.
I bet it was.
Of my younger years, because that was my only escape at the time, right? There was no one else at home or within the cult to talk to. My only point of contact to the outside world was her.
That must have been very healing, reaching out to her again and getting the full story in the last couple of years and then hearing her side of things. And, that's just what a full circle moment for you.
Absolutely. It was very healing, but at the same time, it was very hard to cope with hearing that, because
I bet
every time you hear of someone else who's a survivor of their actions, right, it just brings up this anger in you, because it's the way they've treated that person for no actual reason just blows your mind, and it just makes you so angry. You're like, that's not fair. That why did that happen to you? And you didn't deserve that. And thank you for sticking up for me. And I'm so sorry that happened to you. And everything you had to deal with after that, with finding a new job and coping with finances. I don't know what she went through, but it made me feel really guilty for that all happening, mainly because of me.
And this is why we tell the teachers, right? Unless you align with their beliefs, don't go work for them, right?
Yeah.
Like you've got to have like 98% aligning with their beliefs, and don't join OSG if you do not align with their beliefs, because you'll find yourself without a job if you overstep any kind of a threshold or boundary that they have.
Absolutely. And at that time, the female teachers had to wear skirts, and now they don't have to do that anymore, but that was just crazy. Like, she didn't understand why she had to wear these ridiculous skirts to school.
And look at what happened to her. She took her, her instinct and spoke about it, as you should when you're a teacher, to another teacher. And look what happened. Like, she got hit with the PBCC path of destruction. Like, oh, you voiced something that's not, that's taboo to us. Gone. Poof. Like, they just do not care about how they treat people.
So what made this whole situation even worse was this specific teacher was a person of another race, right? Knowing the racism within the cult, behind her back, she was always known as the smelly Indian lady, this, that, and the other thing. And they would talk to us like in a racist way about her. And
it's so mean.
All the time they were like, why is this Indian lady working here anyway? I mean, she doesn't.
Oh my gosh.
Why is this Indian lady working for us anyway? I mean, it's not the kind of people we want our children surrounded by. And, who even employed her? What were they thinking? And blah, blah, blah. Just because she has a different skin tone. I mean, are you for real?
Like, no consideration of her humanity and her intelligence and her qualifications, which is probably far more than you, in the PBCC.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That is heart-wrenching. Absolutely heart-wrenching. And this is inside a school system where you're supposed to be teaching. I guess they teach history there, do they not? Like, what did you learn in your history? Did you learn, now that you know what a history class is really supposed to look like, when you compare the two, is there a stark difference?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The very basics, 5% of history was covered. First and Second World War, the Cold War, Vietnamese War.
You mean racism? Was that covered, Cheryl?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Racism. I mean, we learned about the slaves and stuff, but not about racism. She taught us. She was the one who taught us about Martin Luther King.
Wow.
Because she saw it as a necessary subject to go over with us for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Good for her.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the sad thing is that this is happening inside a school. And might I add, their latest video of the state-of-the-art facility in Sydney that just rolled out is supposed to be this absolute incredible state-of-the-art school that is, showing the whole world the future of what schooling is. And may we add that racism comes with it. And may we add that you're not allowed to be gay inside this school. And may we add that there is a list of rules you must follow in this state of the art education system that the PBCC system has.
May we add, you cannot marry a person of another race.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, I will just add that, like, no, it is not a state of the art facility that you have there. You are creating just more prisons that are just got this beautiful interior that you are presenting. No, this is not state of the art. This is lowering yourself to the lowest of low. Obviously, you finish OSG with a diploma, right? Like, you got your certificate at the end of year 12. How did that certificate and diploma transfer out into the real world?
Well, I would hardly even describe it as a diploma or certificate. It's a sheet of paper from OneSchool Global saying I had completed my schooling at OneSchool Global, whatever. Not even like there was no even like overview of topics that had been learned or grades. Like, when you look at a diploma from the real world, you look at a certificate, you've got certain subjects, and then you've got your grade that you qualified with, right? Nothing of the sort of on there. Like, it's just my name and a signature from one of the teachers, and that was all I left with. And that was the moment when I really thought, damn, I'm fucked. Like, this is really fucked. After 5 years, I finally realized what they had been doing to me, that they'd been giving me this kind of qualification so that I could leave with no proper degree. So I was fucked in the outside world. That's all I had. Then during the last 2 years of school, we were made to work for a local company. So 2 hours before work and 2 hours after work, we had to work at a local business. So that we basically did like an apprenticeship in that sense, right? So we had a bit of work experience, so that for other people, for non-community members in the workplace, they would ask us, oh, what did you study and what did you do? We could say we did an apprenticeship, so it looked normal. So
and were you allowed to choose where you did that apprenticeship and what trade you wanted to do?
No. So what happened there was a local business that was struggling, which we'll go into later on. But there was a local business that was struggling, and they were like, you know what, we don't really want to focus on it too much. It's costing us too much to keep running. So we'll kind of give it to the students as a test run. But we still had to, live up to their expectations and meet sales targets and do the marketing and do the purchasing and customer contact and all that before and after school. And if there was an issue, they would be like, why didn't you do this? And we're like, well, firstly, I'm still a full-time student. Secondly, I'm trying to study. And thirdly, this is, not really my responsibility. So that was kind of like the chaotic end of schooling. And I just remember that time just being like, you know what? Fuck it. What am I doing this for? Why do I need to learn? There's nothing in OSG that pushes you to do your best, because you're going to leave school. You're going to end up in a job the same as your older brother, the same as your dad, the same as your uncle, the same as your grandpa did. There's no real reason.
I notice you're saying all men that you're growing up and you have to replace.
No, but the women maybe work for 2 years as maybe an assistant or someone on the phone, internal sales person on the phone. And that's it. That's what they're limited to, right? And then they go off and get married and have children and cook and clean, and that's it for them.
So what you're saying is, in your experience of being within the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, that the women don't get to have a career?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
So that's where
on their podcast, they're saying that women get to have careers. So, and when did you leave?
What?
Yeah, when did you leave?
2021.
Yeah, there's this one girl that everyone around the world in the Brethren knows, who is the one girl with a business, and they make it out like everybody can have a career like her. No, Dawson was a OneSchool Global student. He has lots of sisters. He knows. I was only allowed to work for a few years. I have not worked since I got married 15 years ago. Women don't have careers.
I really think that coming from women saying that in the cult is just laughable, because they all know that is not reality of their life. They're probably saying, you know, their work, what they've done at the superstores, the Campus & Co, is their career. That's not a career. That's voluntary work, may I add. You're not getting paid for that. You didn't study for that. You did not get a degree for that. That's not a career. I will define a career for you. Take a second. A career is something where you study for say 3 to 7, 8, 9 years on a certain topic. You do a degree in a bachelor's, you do a master's, you specify in a certain direction, and then you work in that field. That's a career. What the women in the Brethren are doing is not a career.
And the lucky, very lucky few, as they have put on their podcast, to pretend like they're normal, I'm happy for them, but it's not the norm. Yeah. It's not the norm, and nor should it be portrayed to be the norm.
The thing is, though, is even her business, because I'm not going to call it a career because it's not a career, even her business.
Basically being a virtual assistant.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just going to say, like, careers include, like, somebody wanting to become a lawyer, somebody wanting to become a vet tech, someone wanting to become a doctor, someone wanting to become a pediatrician, someone wanting to become, you know, there's myriads and myriads and myriads of careers you can choose that match your passion. So in the PBCC, you're not allowed to know what your passion is. Your passion is limited to a scope, a little tiny bubble of what you're allowed and what you know. So to these women, like, I do agree, Dawson, they do think that this is a career, and that's good to point out what a career actually is. It is something you study for. And it is what you are doing in there is not a career. So, you know, telling the public that your women can go and have careers, you know, talking about it on Strive 26 that, you know, you can have a career. I want to just tell those girls in there that do want to have careers, challenge them. This is how change is made. If you want to become a lawyer, which I do know there's someone who would love to become a lawyer, go become a lawyer. Literally, I don't care if you're 50 years old. They've said you can have a career now. Just be like, you know what? I'm not going to be able to make most of the meetings anymore. I'm going to choose to go become a lawyer. And so for the next like 8 years, I'm probably going to be out, but I'm going to become a lawyer. And it's acceptable. They've said it. Just you got to challenge them.
Absolutely. I would like the PBCC to do a documentary on a woman in the cult and the career she's done. Show us, prove it, provide us with evidence. Show us what she studied, show her degree in what she has and what she's working as now. I challenge you.
And something outside admin, right? Something outside of accounting, something outside of what you use to run your businesses. I'm talking real careers. That's a really good idea, Dawson. Absolutely, really good idea. Outside of school, what did that look like for you?
Well, we didn't really have an outside of school time. You went to school, afterwards we went to work to do to get experience, and then you come home, have a shower, have dinner, go to the meeting, come home from the meeting, work on school, on the Campus & Co stuff, or do a bit of homework, and that was it. So we didn't really have any free time. There was no time to follow a hobby, to, you know, anything you did. If you're into biking, I remember my brother was really into biking, and he was considered as immature. Or my cousin was into into farming and stuff. And because he did that outside of his school or work time, it was considered immature. For me, it was being into music, and I've always had a huge passion for music. However, as you're not allowed music in the cult, I had nothing. So what I did, I kind of created my little hobby farm in the garden, and my parents weren't very happy with it, but I went out, I bought pigs, I bought goats, I bought chickens, I bought geese, and I had this whole little farm set up at home because that was all I could do, where it wasn't really considered as, although they were considered as pets and I would get talking tos from local brothers, They would print out sheets of ministry where one of the great men had spoken about having pets and would come and give it to me. But that was all I had. That was all I had to spend my time with. That wasn't something that was driving me completely crazy and insane.
It was an outlet for you.
Absolutely.
You didn't get to like skateboard or bike with your worldly neighbor friends like Gareth got to do?
No, absolutely not. I remember, and this will go on to the next topic. I remember I as a child, I always used to run away from home. Either I was at the farm or I was at one of the friends from primary school's house, and my parents would come to the house and drag me out in front of the other kids' parents, and they would be like, what the hell is going on? Why can't you just let him play here for a couple of hours? They're doing nothing wrong. They're playing with Lego.
And meanwhile, we have Gareth on his podcast saying that he always went and played with the neighbor kids down the road. Like, I did it too, but I was sneaky. My parents didn't know about it. But no, you're not supposed to mix with them. Like,
no.
Okay, when you're in primary school, at school, that's fine. But say you go home and then you play with them outside of school time, that is taboo. That is not allowed.
I want to remind the listeners and viewers, here's a clip of Gareth in one of the podcasts explaining his freedom he had as a child that none of the rest of us got to experience.
Was being part of the Plymouth Brethren a big part of your childhood, Greg?
Yeah, well, obviously I attended church regularly, but really most of my childhood was made up of attending school and then after school activities, where from kindergarten to year 6, all my friends were non-members of the church. Played a lot of sport with them, and after school rode my bike, as all kids did, and went down to the park and played footy with the young blokes around from the community.
And what about schools? What school did you go to?
I went to Eastwood Public School, which is just a local government school down the road from kindergarten through to year 6. I think some of the brothers also went there. And then I went to OneSchool Global from year 7 to year 12. Funny enough, my children still attend Eastwood Public School, so because I still live in the same area. And funny, I was there the other day and noticed one of the teachers, just one left, and it's still there from when I was around. But most of my mates from those younger years were from outside the community. One of my best mates, an Indian from up the road, his parents still live there, funny enough. The other day I was with Henry and an unidentified flying object from our house went over there. It's not exactly the neighbour right door, it's like 3 or 4 doors back. And I took him around there, Henry, around to meet them, to ask if they could find this object on the roof or wherever it was. Yeah, it was really kind. He came to the front door. They're fairly old now, they're probably in their early 70s, late 60s, and I introduced them to Henry and they were laughing with him and explaining they knew me from back when I was his age.
And growing up, Gareth, did you have friends outside the church?
Yeah, I did, Lloyd. I had a lot of friends outside of the church. I grew up born and bred in Concord, 41 The Drive, and moved up to, when I was about 5, to Beecroft. Spent about 5 years there. Then moved to Eastwood when I was about 10. Yeah, had a lot of friends around the neighbourhood. I was into skateboarding a bit, so I built this quarter pipe. And I had Mikey over the back and a few mates up around the corner. Tony Hawk was the goat at the time. So we used to try and do a few airs, but mostly it ended up with a bit of a face plant in the bushes. But no, we had a good time. I made some good connections at Marsden High School. I went there for 4 years. Highlight was probably 93. We won the Rugby Union Cup. We actually beat Malvina High. They're a pretty good team. They had a lot of big Pacific Islander boys. They were pretty hard to cut down, but we had a really good captain. He actually went on to represent Scotland. He ended up playing in France, I think, for Toulon. I actually caught up with him 3 or 4 years ago, had a good chat, good yarn about just the old days and what we've been doing for the last 30 years. But I've been in the construction industry, Lloyd, for sort of over 30 years, and as all my brothers would have, we've got a lot of connections with trades and sparkies and chippies and architects, designers. Every time we catch up, they understand us, we understand them. We have a good chat and yarn about anything and everything.
Have you met up with Mike out of interest since those days, the skateboarding?
No, I wouldn't have met Mike since I got married, probably.
I was telling a story before about that UFO, the object that flew over. I went there first, and I knocked on the door and I met Mike's dad, and he knew me straight away because he still lives there. Anyway, then he said, I'll introduce you to my grandson. Mike's got a son, he's probably mid-20s, and he came out and I never knew he existed, and I shook his hand and laughed that his dad used to skateboard with my older brother. So it's funny how things go around.
Parent.
towards the end of my time in the PBCC, I gravitated towards music as a space where I could find freedom and solace and understanding, right? And I would have a lot of what they call pre-recorded music from the outside world. And then around that time, it was spoken about from Bruce Hales very strongly about having pre-recorded music. And I remember our parents going through our phones and laptops and finding all the music and saying, you need to delete this. And I remember not doing it, putting it off for months and months and months, and having said I'd done it. However, my conscience grew and grew on me. I felt, I was getting towards the age where I knew I should be getting married and getting right. And so I was like, okay, I need to get rid of this music. So one Saturday I told my mum I was going off to study or something, and drove to this little hut in the woods and sat there and listened to the music I had for hours, thinking then that that was the last time I was ever going to listen to music in my entire life.
Wow.
And just sitting there and bawling and crying, because that was what I clung to. That was all I had at that time. And they took that one last thing away from me, was the music. Music, which is, there's nothing evil about music. Of course, you have songs which are based on topics which maybe aren't great, but are you really serious? And I remember that so that was it. We had no music with any kind of singing on it. So all we had was instrumentals. We're like, okay, that's what we're allowed to have now. And I remember one evening, me and my brothers outside chopping wood or something, and we had instrumental music playing, and my dad came down into the garage and he was like, turn that off instantly. It's been spoken about pre-recorded music. And I was like, are instrumentals also considered as pre-recorded music? Or yeah. And he was serious.
Wow.
We had to delete, and even my brothers and sisters who were then married, and we had those clavinovas where you could play midis on and sing along to them. And I remember going there for tea one night and wanting to play some music on the piano, and I was like, where are all your midis gone? They're like, oh, it's been spoken about. We deleted them.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to play them on our keyboard either, like not allowed to play these literal piano tracks.
But can I just say something here? In the Brethren, if you go out for dinner on a Saturday evening and someone plays the piano, and they will play the song Piano Man, may I remind them that Piano Man is written by Elton John, who is a gay man. And that's okay.
So talking about Elton John, well, when I was with Gareth Hales for dinner in Sydney in June 2009 on my Australia trip, he found out I played the piano when we were at a house that had a big grand piano there. And I sat down and he bent down to the basket of music books and pulled out Elton John and put it in front of me and said, here, play this. And I was absolutely gobsmacked because my dad had made me throw away all my Elton John music.
Wow.
So there's what do you call it? Juxtaposition of judgment there.
Right. Yeah, and
double standard.
They weren't allowed to play songs like Let It Be or, all those songs from the Beatles, because the Beatles had such an evil influence across the world. But Elton John was okay.
I don't think the Hales family realizes how much they got away with versus what the rest of us had to. And that is really what has caused the disruption inside there, is those podcasts they did have shot themselves in the foot over and over and over, because I've had like staunch Bruce Hales supporters who, messaged me at the very beginning of this, like, what am I doing? And giving me the what for, who have now come around to being like, I now see what you were saying at the very beginning. So it's like taken them 4 years, but it wasn't me or this podcast that got them to see through it. It was the podcasts that the PBCC are doing that are making these people see through it. And a lot of them are wearing masks. Like a lot of them wearing two masks. They got a mask to hold their position until they can get out. And so that's where we're getting so much of our information is from people who are in their inner circle, who are now feeding us information that are seeing through it now. But again, they obviously, like, one thing that you get shown in there is you're really good at learning how to play the part inside a circle. And then when you leave that circle, you are who you really are. And that's where a lot of these people are learning how to do it, is they know who they truly are. They know what they're seeing is fake. And it's giving them their whole identity back to them, but they still have to save face when they go to meeting or in these inner circles.
And it really points up the hierarchy, I think, in a way that it's never been shown before, because we've always maybe heard the ex-brethren's opinions. Now we're hearing, the Haleses and the higher ups who they choose to be on their podcast, and they're self-exposing the hierarchy.
Yeah, it's just hilarious.
It's fabulous. Yeah, they're doing it for us.
Oh, my, keep going. Keep going.
Yeah. Keep digging the hole. It's getting deep.
As we're on the subject with their podcast, I mean, they've done a podcast that says that they aren't homophobic and they don't have an issue with gays. So, like, in your experience, Dawson, like, when you watched that podcast, I don't know if you watched it, but what was your reaction to that?
Oh, it built up so much anger and frustration in me because that is not true. And anyone in there will know that that's not true. And that should be raising questions with people on the inside, because they've said something that they all know this does not align with their beliefs. They do not support homosexuality. And my experience of that, when we used to say the word gay or homosexuals at home, we would get taken aside instantly, and my mum would be like, "You cannot say that word. That's that's a very evil word." And my dad would be like, instantly lose his shit and be like, "Don't say that word. You can't say that word in this house. It's forbidden. That's evil. That's wickedness. That's of the world," and blah, blah, blah. So now them saying that they have no problem with it, I'm sure. Like, okay, fine. Let's, saying this to my family. Let's meet up. Let's have a chat. You don't have a problem.
Let's unpack this. Yeah.
Talk about it.
Well, and like you said in your previous podcast, I think you said, where you wrote a letter to your dad and mom and siblings telling them that you were leaving and that you were gay. And I know of another man who's left, he's maybe around 30 years old, and he wrote a letter to his parents telling them that he was gay, and he knows that they never passed it on to his siblings. They might say that they don't say that they're against homophobia, but like, they will, I'm sure that deep in their heart, they still love you, but they can't support you. There's a difference between being against or supporting. And I think that they're just trying to squeak the bare minimum out on their podcast so they don't seem bad, but really we know that they just are saying that for good publicity, whether they say they want good publicity or not, but they don't support their homosexual son or their lesbian daughter.
Absolutely not. So the audacity of them saying that they don't have an issue with homosexual people, it makes me so angry, because I'm the one that's had to go through therapy and work on all these topics and working on grief and loss and losing contact with my family, not them. How dare they fucking say that? Mm-hmm. And if they really do not have a problem with it, then show up at my doorstep and say sorry for everything you've done.
Exactly.
Because it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable the way you've treated someone like me, not only me, but other people who have come out as gay and left and have received zero support, have been shit on because of who they are.
Yeah. Male and female, right? We've had many
Absolutely.
Male and female ex-members. And, I do know that they derive this in their podcast from one ex-member who is gay, who still blows smoke up Bruce Hales' ass. I mean, we all know who we're talking about. He's done a video about them and he's posted it online. And I mean, most of us have blocked him, right? Also understanding his backstory and why he is supporting the brethren and why they sit there and hold hands back and forth is a whole other podcast. But 99.99% of every gay member that has left the brethren are going to give you exact carbon copy story that Dawson's given us right now.
And I have a theory about that. So say, for example, you have a gay man or a lesbian woman, and they would slip away out of the brethren, not ever speak against the brethren, not ever speak about being gay publicly or lesbian publicly. And there might be a very slim chance that somebody in their family might still talk to them. But it's all very circumstantial on how you are. Do you think that's right to say? Like, I think 100%. That they are, there's maybe an ex-member that I know about who has not ever gone publicly and she still has contact with her parents. And I'm so happy for anybody that still has contact with their family, but it's so conditional on how the person behaves. And that's not, for instance, Dawson shouldn't be afraid to be himself once he leaves, because finally you have freedom. Because if you be who you are, it's even worse. The contact with your family is cut off even more.
Yeah. And it also depends too on if you've spoken out or not, right? So
Absolutely.
That is another factor, right? They don't like anybody speaking out because, we've got to keep these lies and secrets buried underneath all the ever-growing rug that they all stand on. But for the most part, yes, as soon as you're heard that you're a gay or lesbian or are a part of the LGBTQ community, you're cut off.
May I just add to that from my experience of what I've seen and heard in Nicole, many young men in there who are now older men and priests of younger people have had sexual moments with each other, because when I was living at my priest, I remember his wife, she got a little bit tipsy, and she told me that my older brother and her husband had done like naughty sexual things in their youth together. So may I just add that there is so many people in there who pretend that they've never done anything with the same sex. It's bullshit, because when you're going through puberty and teenage years in the cult, right? You're not allowed to experiment sexually. So what happens is mostly a lot of them start doing things with each other. So that they say, like, oh, we don't support homophobia and blah 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 blah. Look in the fucking mirror. Let's be real. You've all done it. All of you have done it.
And some of this shit goes on at the OneSchool Global.
Oh, yeah.
Which Dawson has told me about privately. Yeah, it literally goes on during the breaks. Yeah.
There was always these little groups that you knew if you were part of, you'd be able to do these different like things together and get up to mischief, and they would always like come about, and they'd always be found out. Or these WhatsApp groups where young kids were sending nudes on, they would always like that. All goes on within the cult, but they don't, because they can't experiment their sexuality freely and do what a young person is supposed to do.
Yeah, self-discovery. Yeah.
So this is a proven statistic that's from Gallup of 2025. This is how we can summarize this stat. About 3 to 4% of adults identify as gay or lesbian, roughly 1 in 30 people, according to the Gallup polling. Okay, so if you take the 55,000 members that are in the PBCC right now, the estimated numbers would be about 1,650 to 2,200 people out of 55,000 would likely be gay or lesbian. So, I mean, that's a staggering number of people that are still in there. And I do know that the people that reached out to me that were asking for you to come back on, Dawson, I knew what they were asking for. They wanted to see another gay man on the TV. They loved your enthusiasm. They loved the way that you can call out the bullshit the way that you're calling out the bullshit. And, Ben's kind of taken a hiatus, and you've kind of replaced this exuberant personality that lives inside them that they're not allowed to express. And so by watching you, it keeps them alive inside. Right? So you've got to think, like, there could be, upwards of 2,500 people inside the Brethren right now, gay, part of the LGBTQ community.
And like anybody who would have known Dawson in the Brethren, I mean, we had brief contact, but he was such a bubbly, fun person. And it's like now Dawson now is like bubbly fun times 100.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I want to move back over into the racism portion of things. What experiences did you have inside the cult that to do with racism? Like, what were your experiences inside there?
It's hard to pinpoint something, but everyone at the breaks was always, they would always make fun of Muslims and Jews and people of color, and Indians, like they would mimic their accents, and it wasn't in a way to like, you know, show the cool side of different cultures. It was a way to make fun of them. And for example, at work, they would never employ someone of a different, how should I say, they would rarely employ someone of color. They would never employ a Muslim or a Jew. Like there was always a certain type of person that they were okay with. But as soon as you had a different belief, as soon as you had a different skin color, as soon as you were a little bit different or dressed a different way, you were made fun of. They would make jokes about you. And I remember that happening a lot. For example, you know, at the Sunday breaks or in meetings at work where if you're in a meeting at work with only cult members, they would, you know, slag off other people at work or the guys in the warehouse and the way they talked because it was a different language. It was, you know.
And do you think, like, I wonder if so much of it comes from ignorance?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Emotional immaturity. They're just immature. Like they don't have the emotional intelligence or intelligence at all on how to be able to accept someone different than their beliefs. That's another very defining feature of a cult, right?
Yeah.
I mean, as much as they want to say they're not a cult, these are defining features of a cult, not being able to accept difference of opinions or difference of cultures or difference of skin colors, difference of belief systems. They just can't tolerate it.
They can't accept different kind of people in that sense, or different kind of races in that sense, but eating cultural food, so eating Chinese food, eating Turkish food, eating Indian food, they're all for it. They have no problem with that. But going to the actual store and picking up your Chinese food order and then walking out and not making fun of the way they spoke or copying the way they spoke rarely happen.
Yeah.
And in the cult, we used to try and do these little, I would guess we'd call them Christmas markets, but they were more like little cultural markets. So we would have a team of people and we'd split into different teams, and each team had to do a different culture at the market. And what we'd do is we'd make a little stand, make it look like that culture. So we'd have Mexican, we would have Indian, we'd have Chinese, and that kind of stuff. And then you would set up your stand to look more like that culture and make their food. And I remember, and yes, I was involved in this. However, I knew no different back then. But that it was allowed to get this far is just wild to me. We would dress up. We had an Indian stand, and we would dress up as Indian people and paint our skin color to brown. And me and my brothers, we wrote this little song that was very, very racist towards the Indian culture. And you would think if you did something like that, that you would get a priestly and get a talking to about it. No, they thought it was hilarious. That song went viral within the cult. And it was like, and I look back now and I feel absolutely terrible because it's the little kids that used to ask for that song because it was quite a fun little song we made in that sense, but so fucking racist. Yeah. And they had that song playing on our stand. We were there talking in Indian accents with brown painted skin, mocking the Indian culture. It wasn't like, hey, look, this is Indian food. Wow. Like, look at their culture. Look how fun it is. Like, how cool is that? No, it was like, ah, ha, 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 look at them kind of thing. This is Indians. And
that is disgusting. I mean, here in Canada, our former prime minister had dressed up as blackface once. And I mean, that was all over the news worldwide, right? You just don't do shit like that.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
You do not do. Did you say this happened in OSG?
It was part of the OSG. It was part of Campus and Co and OSG. I forget exactly what it was, but it was all kind of combined.
disgusting.
Like the basis for normally doing that kind of thing is let's teach the kids about how they live in India and what food they cook and why they have the traditional wear that they have. There is such a different level you could go about that in such a respectful educational way. And this is just taking it as a mockery.
I don't even know what to. I can't even.
No,
I don't even know how to wrap my head around this.
Since
and this is not only unique to Zurich. This has happened in Australia. This has happened in all sorts of other countries.
And since I've left, I've shown my friends the song and the pictures, and they've all looked at me. That I was like, I have something to show you. And they looked at it, and their expression changed. Like they were horrified. They were so shocked, and they looked at me. They're like, Dawson, you can never show this to anyone because this is racism on a next level. This is really, really bad. May I just add to that, though, that these kind of events were done to generate money for the school, right? So in Zurich, we were very isolated from the other meetings in the church. And we didn't have a lot of money. So we would have these, what they called grade A events once every summer, where people would pay thousands to come to spend a weekend in Zurich. We would have these culture stands, and in these big events, you could buy these tickets. So they would sell tickets at a crazy price in the thousands to go to someone's house for a cultural dinner. So it would be an Indian dinner, or it'd be a Mexican dinner, or a Chinese dinner, or something along that line. And you'd pay a lot of money, which the money would go to the school. Mm-hmm. Come along that evening, you go to this place for dinner and you have to dress up. And I remember we went to this Indian evening once, and my sisters all dressed up in saris, us guys all dressed up in dresses, like the Indian kind of tradition. And you'd go there and everyone would be mimicking the Indian accent and making a mockery of Indian culture. The whole reason behind it, to generate money for their school. And there would be another evening. My family held this evening where we did a Chinese culture, and it was during COVID, so everyone was wearing masks and making mockery of the Chinese for starting COVID. And it was I always remember thinking deep down in my gut feeling it felt wrong. This can't be right. Of course it would. Adults doing this. This isn't just a bunch of youngsters being immature and being silly and having fun. This is adults. This is grown men in their 50s, 60s, 30s, 40s, women, all of them doing this.
They're just taking it too far.
I can get behind cultural food evenings. I mean, we've done that before with our own family of having cultural food is once a month. So this month we're doing Indian food. This month we're doing, you know what I mean? Going through the cultures. Yeah. But the thing is, it's about embracing that culture, getting to know it. I mean, I homeschooled my kids for many years. And so it was all about embracing and understanding. If I dare ever caught my children mocking that, old school parenting would have come out, and you can gather what that would include. Absolutely not. Every one of these cultures deserve to exist on the planet. Right? Absolutely. Could you imagine if this culture, say we have and I'm just going to take say we have a Chinese culture, an Asian culture, and we were the minority amongst them, and we caught them talking and doing it to us, we wouldn't stand for it. This white privilege is, especially in the PBCC, comes with such arrogance and ignorance. And I go back to Bruce Hales in the last recording that we produced with his meeting, and he talks about us opposers and talks about the arrogance and the ignorance and the ignorance of arrogance and the arrogance of ignorance, however he worded it. Right. But again, there's just this massive projection of you're feeling guilty, dude. Right. And you don't know how to process your guilt. So what do? You throw it on the loud opposers, and then you put that throughout all your people of no, they're the ones that are being arrogant and ignorant. How can you sit in a system like this that is teaching these children this horrible, disgusting way of living. And then we wonder why we're in the wars that we're in. It starts at home. It starts with your teaching with your children. You do not act like this. Like, this is just, I'm just so riled up inside because it's a very, my middle child's getting married to the most beautiful Indian lady here in April. And to understand different cultures is such a beautiful garden. That's what I look at it. It's just this garden of so many different flowers. How can you walk into a garden of flowers and choose like, well, I don't like you because you've got this type of a center and you've got this type of stem. Like, when it's the most gorgeous flower, like, I can't grasp the concept of how people can live with racism inside their blood like this. It makes me so angry. Makes me just so angry.
Yeah, my parents were absolutely terrible. Like, I've spoken about this on the podcast, I think before with Lane, because he was also witness to my parents. But to the point when the last time I visited my parents, sorry, I hope this is not going off on a tangent too much, but I went to visit my parents 2 months before we left the PBCC. And at one point we were parked outside a grocery store and two ladies walked in front of the car wearing Muslim headdress. They're just, their eyes were visible. And she looked at them and muttered to herself, "Go back to where you came from." And I looked at my girls because we were in the back of the car, and I looked at them and I said quietly to them, I said, that's not how we talk about people like that, just because they're different. Like, it's so bad, that's generational. She would have learned that from her parents and the people around her.
Mm-hmm. But at
like, it's sickening. If you could get
stop, right?
It absolutely has to stop. That's why we're talking about it today. Is it's so vital and important to realize that the world is so vast and so beautiful, and we're just a tiny little minority.
May I just add, like, on the racism side, that the Brethren kind of despise the Jews. From what I've learned and noticed while I was part of the Brethren, like the New Testament and everything, like, obviously the Jews don't believe in it. However, Jesus himself was a Jew. And I've always experienced a lot of racism towards Jews. And what really surprised me recently was, there was a shooting, there was an awful shooting on Bondi Beach in Australia, directed towards Jews. And I recently noticed that the Plymouth Brethren had released an article on their website, providing their support and prayers to the Jews, which kind of shocked me, because behind closed doors, that's not who they are. They will do anything to provide a better image to the public as to what they support and everything around that, but behind closed doors, that is not who they are. It's really, really, really shocking. And you think back towards the basics of their religion. God created mankind according to the Bible, and love your neighbor like a brother. And it's the complete opposite of what they believe in and what they stand for. They're separation rules. If God created mankind, then why do you have fucking separation rules? Explain it to me. It doesn't make sense. And if you are out there and trying to convert other people, then why are you separating them from you? It doesn't make sense. Open your eyes.
And that statement about Bondi Beach was probably because it was in Sydney, and that's where Brucey lives. So they have to keep a good public image there. They don't probably care.
Looks better for the RRT.
Their statement pissed off a lot of insiders. Again, another thing that they did that shot themselves in the foot. That pissed a lot of them off because, again, like you say, Dawson, that's not the narrative inside there. Yeah. They did that for public relation. That was it. That was a PR.
100%.
That was all that was. Yeah, exactly.
And I can just imagine at the Sunday breaks, the way people would be like, oh, it's just a couple of Jews, a few less on this world, good kind of thing. That's the view they would have on that kind of thing.
I know you have a story about Bruce Hales. Can you walk us through what happened in that?
Yeah, so back in 2010, they were holding a fellowship meeting in Zurich, and Bruce Hales was coming to visit, and he came to stay with us. He didn't come to stay that time, he just came to visit before the meeting. And it was a very weird experience. Like, it was very superficial, and, you know, we had to have the house absolutely immaculate. We had people like Warwick Joyce or John Anderson and coming to vet the house beforehand to make sure it was suitable for His Majesty to come.
It's like having the Pope, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, the Pope doesn't even care about those things.
There's no hierarchy in there, though, remember? There's no hierarchical position. So.
And I remember we never used to have our cars in the garage, and we had to have the garage cleared out so he could drive into the garage so nobody could see him. Who fucking cares? We're in a small village in Switzerland. No one bloody cares about this guy. The balcony had to have bamboo walls put up and everything. And la-di-da-di-da. It was havoc for weeks before he came. And it was all over in 2 hours. Anyways, he came along, came in a house. Of course, he enters the house and everyone is silent. Not a word is spoken. And he sat down in his big sofa that we'd bought specially for him. We had to buy a special sofa for him.
You bought a new sofa?
We bought a new, like, a single sofa kind of seat for him to sit in. And they were like, yeah, that would be the kind of one he would like, and blah, blah, blah. And the
his holy ass can't sit on a used chair.
I'm telling you, I can't even go into all the details because there's too many, but it was just insane. And I remember he was sitting there, and us kids were kind of like clambering around him because, you know, it was this special guy that had come. And I remember I knocked my head on the headrest of one of the sofas, and it was kind of a bit of a commotion. And he looked over at me and he was like, "What's your name?" And I was Dawson. He misunderstood it and said Lawson. And he kind of went into this topic as this Lawson, someone who went through the Arctic and survived on this mission, and, you know, blah, 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 blah. And we had to look into it. My parents had to do all this research on it because it was obviously like guidance on a specific topic. And they were like, you know, was that guidance on a possible name change? Like, should your name now be Lawson because that's what he said, and all this shit. Like, it was just so pathetic. It was so awful. And I remember as a small child, like, I hated it. Like, I really hated it. Anyways,
but that's because every word he says is like law. If he said it, it must mean that the Lord means something for you, even if you change your 10-year-old child's name.
It's just, I can't even describe how abnormal it is. And just like, I tell my friends about this, and they sit there with their jaws hanging because they can't believe this kind of hierarchy exists in the current world we live in. It's just so abnormal. Anyhow, he left, and then 10 days later, he turned up again. Like, it was a surprise visit, and nobody knew about it. And I remember this, I will never forget this. The evening before he came, us kids, we used to have so much, like, there was 4 of us little boys, and we'd cause so much trouble, right? And there was this one room in our house which had nice slidey floorboards, and we used to polish it. We used to spray polish on the floor and, you know, get mum's oven gloves and pretend we were snowboarding because it was so slippery. Anyway, that evening, John Anderson and Nick Sidifin and a bunch of other heavies turned up, and obviously we're like, you know, Mick and Grace Ching, Bruce Hales is arriving tomorrow morning early. House needs to be immaculate tonight. We had to arrange all people to come and help overnight. And I remember them on their hands and knees scrubbing this floor to get the polish off in case Bruce Hales slipped up on it, right? So that was my first, like, yes, done something. Had no idea Bruce Hales was coming.
Give him mum's oven gloves.
Literally.
He can slide as well.
The next morning, I remember being woken up to my sister being like, "You gotta get up, Bruce Hales is coming to stay." And I was like, what? Fuck this shit. You're not waking me up because that idiot's coming to stay. I remember I was so pissed. that they'd woken me up because Brucey was coming to stay. Anyway, he came to stay for 2 days, and that was the time where Zurich consisted of a lot of little, like, family-owned businesses, and they were all struggling a bit. Like, little businesses struggle, like, it's a normal thing. Not a lot of them actually have success, right? So he generated this new concept of joining all these little businesses together as what we now know as One Zurich Group. So it's like 4 or 5 different companies that they combine together. Keep in mind, right, it's a small locality. These people spend a lot of time together already. Then they had to spend all day, every day with each other. You go to work with each other, you go to the meeting with each other, you go to school with each other, you spend the weekend with each other. It caused chaos. People started picking sides. There was so much gossip around that time. Like, I remember as a little kid, you'd always listen to all this stuff, and this person was having a go at that person, and that person was having a go at that person, because now one person had become the managing director of the entire group and was managing everyone's little companies, and they obviously didn't want to let the little companies go. And people became so pissed, they were like, do you know what, we're not going to do this anymore. I'm going to work in the warehouse from now on, doing deliveries, because I'm so pissed at what they've done with my company. Like, people not even wanting to give their companies away. They had no choice. They had to hand over their companies to be part of this group. That was one thing he did. Then the next thing he did was, the next day he flew to Rome. And this is when he merged Castellamare and Novi, which were 2 different meetings, and made them to one, which was Rome. And again, taking people from places they've grown up in, their hometowns, moving them to a completely new city, putting them together, making them work together with completely new faces, making people move from Australia to Rome to help build up their locality. And I remember, like, the Italian people absolutely hated those Australian people that had moved in, these big heavies that were there on a mission to help build up the place. And I remember one thing that happened was there was a guy there called, I think it was called Gianni, if I have it correct in my memory. Bruce Hales made him change his name to John because Gianni didn't really fit in. Like, he thought it would be more suitable if his name was more something English and, that he could pronounce probably. I don't understand, but imagine someone coming along saying, look, right, you're not going to live there anymore. You're now going to live here. You're now going to work with X, Y, Z, whether you like it or not. Oh, and by the way, your name is no longer Gianni. It's John. Surprise.
So it's like a cultural overhaul, like, with absolutely no consideration. No.
And they've suffered ever since. Okay, I've been there many times ever since, and they have suffered. And what that also took away from Zurich was Novi was like the previous locality was like 3-4 hours away from where we lived. So we would look forward to meeting up with them every other week because they were another small isolated locality. Yeah. And that was then taken away from us. So that also made me like even more angry. Anyway, that evening he flew home from Rome back to Zurich. And I remember there was all this chaos because his private jet was, delayed and they couldn't get here on time. And they came home and they were like, do you know what happened? Like, Bruce Hales told the pilot what altitude and what speed to fly at, and his plane landed 2 or 3 seconds before the curfew. Like, isn't that just divine intervention? Like, look at how amazing he is. And it was just like, gag.
He's a pompous ass.
As if the fucking pilot listened to some drunk heavy in the back of his plane telling him what altitude and speed to fly. He knew what he was doing. That's a career, okay? A pilot is a career. He's studied that. He knows what he's doing. Whatever. He comes home. He was pretty drunk, right? He comes home. They're like, oh no, he's just exhausted. He's had like this. He's been to Rome and helping the brethren and blah, blah, blah. Anyhow, he then got someone to play the piano. And the song they were playing was Those Were the Days, My Friends, or something like that. May I remind you, not written by a cult member, okay? And they were all standing around the piano and singing along. And I remember him like leaning on my brother because he wasn't able to stand up, and then danced with his wife around the lounge. And, you know, it was all just like, everyone remembers it as an amazing experience, except for me. I was sitting in the corner just being like, who the hell is this person who's in our house? Like, this is not what I imagined the man of God like. He didn't leave a good impression on me. It was all like these rules changing, and this is happening, and now these people are doing that, and it caused havoc for years and years and years afterwards for the whole locality. And this is the craziest part of it, right? So the One Zurich group idea, merging these companies and everything they did, who did it benefit at the end of the day? The profits went to him, into his back pocket. So this is what he's doing. He goes around, changes all these things. People have to listen to him because he's the man of God. But who does it benefit? Nobody else except for his ass. And people don't wake, and they know it. People do know it in there, but they're not waking up to be like, okay.
And explain why. Explain how him doing that would end up in his pocket. Because all the money goes, the cult members earn more, they donate more, they buy bigger houses, they buy bigger cars, they entertain with better whiskey, they put more money into the school funds, they put more money into the collection on Care Meeting Saturday, which is where they put all their money in the basket to give to people who do the ministry, like Bruce Hales. So that's for a chain of events, it all ends up in his pocket, but he ends up looking like the good Samaritan who had a little bit of an unhinged evening at Mick Ching's. Wasn't he so chill? He was so relaxed. We've never seen our brother like that. He was just going off his rocker a little bit.
And he would describe himself as a humble servant of the Lord.
Yeah.
Bullshit. We organized the bloody sofa for your fat ass to sit in. We had to get crystal cut glasses for you to drink your bloody whiskey out of. You're not a humble servant. You're the complete opposite. You even act worse than a bloody king because you're the one who
Did he ask for a special menu? Because he does that sometimes.
Yeah, we did have a special kind of menu, and it all had to be like signed off beforehand. It all had to go through the heavies, and like they had to check the diet, and okay, that's suitable. That kind of whiskey is going to be suitable for him. Make sure you have clear ice and not like the freezer generated ice kind of thing.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it's only the best for the king. I've heard that expression.
Awful.
Only the best for the king.
I remember happening was around that time, he had spoken about the age of 12 when you become a man or something like that. And I remember he said to me, obviously I was on my best behavior, okay? The man of God was in house. I was on my best behavior. And he remember he said, looked down at me, he's like, you act like a 12-year-old. And I was 10 at the time, and everyone was like, oh, wow, like Dawson's been told he acts like a 12-year-old, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, are you fucking serious? I'm on my best behavior because you're here. You don't actually realize I'm the worst fucking kid you could come across. I'm gay.
Was that the last time you behaved so well?
Probably.
Yeah, humble. Yeah.
And now, you know, my parents are building a new house. I don't know whether it's finished, but they're building this new house with special quarters for His Majesty. So he would have his own little bedroom. There's a car garage, like a car lift, so they can drive it into the lift, and the lift goes down. The car is in the underground garage. He can come up in the lift. He's got his own little quarters with his bedroom and kitchen and ensuite and everything else. It's the extents they go to for this man is just.
And this is not a given that he'll stay there. This is a maybe once in their life again.
Yeah.
And they're willing. Yeah, they're willing to invest all that money and time instead of in their children.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. So talking, you mentioned your parents there. Like, how can we drop into, like, you did have a video that you had posted on TikTok that we ended up sharing because it was so heartfelt. Here's what Dawson had put out on a TikTok video.
Time for a deep talk. I need to go on a rant. I need to get some things off my chest, and I don't know why I'm coming on here to do this, but I just need to. I've been sitting in my car for the past 2 to 3 hours, just bawling my eyes out, crying my entire soul, guts and everything out of me. And I'm not looking for sympathy, but I just need to go. I just need to talk to you guys about something. Some of you would know this. 4 years ago, I escaped a cult called the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. And escaping this cult meant being completely shunned by my entire family. Mother, brothers, sisters, dad, uncles and aunts, grandparents, everybody, okay? And I come out of a big family with 10 children, so it's quite a lot of people to lose all at once. Since then, I've built up a new life. I've gone to school, I have gotten a good degree, I've gotten my own job, I've found new friends, I've built up my new family, and I'm really, really, really loving life. I really am truly, like, I couldn't be more thankful for the life I have now. And I know that's all thanks to me for not giving up on myself. Sometimes it's just bloody hard to carry this burden on a daily basis, every minute, every second of every day. It's something I think about is my family. My family, I think about them every single fucking day. Last week was my birthday, and I wasn't expecting to receive any messages or anything from my family, but my mum did reach out, and she sent me quite a sweet, short and sweet message saying, we're thinking of you on this special day. Lots of love from Mum. Which, yeah, I was really surprised that she sent that to me. But at the same time, it triggered me in 1,000 different ways. Firstly, it's like, okay, you can reach out on my birthday, but you can't reach out on other days of the year, like, and you didn't even ask me how I was. Thirdly, like, just say happy birthday. It's not that hard. You're messaging me about that. Why do you have to beat it about the bush, right? Long story short, it's gotten to me, it's triggered me, and I've been finding it really, really, really hard to cope with the past few days, or just to find some understanding in this situation. I will never, guys, understand, and I'm not going to cry, it's gross, but I will never fucking understand how a mother, after raising her child for 22 years, loving her child for 22 years, can just, for one day to the next, after I didn't do anything, okay? I came out as gay. I was sorry, I can't hide this anymore. It's not something I chose, but it's who I am, and I can't keep living this lie, okay? Why would someone choose to be gay? Like, all of you fucking homophobes out there, why do you think we're gay? It wasn't a choice. We weren't sitting there one day and we're like, oh my god, let's be gay, let's choose the hard way. Are you fucking kidding me? I would be straight any day if I could. It would be so much easier. Anyway, I just don't understand, and I will never understand, how a mother can cut contact with her child. Just out of, like, from the child doing nothing. And yes, I would describe myself as a very loving person with a huge heart, and I would do anything for the people that are close to me and that means so much to me. And that's why I'm a very sensitive person, and I just don't understand how someone can do that to me. The person I grew up with, the person I love the most, and I still love. And I just, like, I dream of her every night, and I want to reach out and be able to hug her. And sorry, I don't want to come on here and cry my eyes out, but why do people have to do this? Why does religion have to be over family? Why can't you just accept your child and love them for who they are? It's not rocket science. Some of you would know this, I'm starting to produce my own music and put it out there, and I'm documenting all my experiences and feelings and emotions and struggles and pain through my music, so that people out there who have experienced similar circumstances or a similar journey can find hope and understanding through my music. But at the same time, it's really fucking personal, and it brings up everything again and again of what I've been through and what I've had to endure and, you know, work on in therapy for years and spend hours working on myself, and I've received no support from my family or from the cult throughout that process. All the damage they've done to me, I have had to undo myself. It's just not fair, like. And I wish I could share that music with my mum, and I know she'd be proud of me, and it would be so nice to be able to sing on stage and pick out her face amongst many in the crowd and find stability and support and love through that eye contact. But it will never happen. It will never happen because they're so fucking brainwashed. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent here. I don't know what I'm saying, but just everyone out there, if you're part of a religion, if you believe in God or anything, just don't make love conditional. It's not what the Bible says, as far as I know. Love your neighbor. Anyways, sorry for the rant. I just had to get it out there. Just love your fucking child, okay? Regardless of who they are, just love your child. Otherwise, don't bloody have children, okay? If you can't love your child unconditionally, don't bloody have children. End of story. Thank you.
Can you explain what was going on with you that day, and how are you coping with this complete and utter mess that they create by their rule of separation? And when a child actually needs their parents, that parent can only give you, say, 1% of the love that they actually have for you. How do you cope with that? Right? Like, I mean, that the video that you did was just so potent in the sense that it was what we all feel, we all go through. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I've had to cut my parents off a few times, is because when you need a mother and father's love, you need all 100% of it. You don't want just this little breadcrumb that they've left out for you. That's not what unconditional love from your parents is supposed to look like. And that video, as you see, is you were deeply, deeply distressed when it came to, you know, your mother reaching out to you on your birthday. And like,
Yeah.
how did that trigger you? Like, what was the trigger in you?
It's kind of, it's hard to put it into one specific word or sentence, but it's knowing that they know I still exist and are okay with reaching out to say happy birthday, but the rest of the time when you're struggling and you're missing them, and I've had like a lot of health issues over the past few months and struggled with certain things and just grieving someone who I really cared for. And, you know, they're not there to put out a hand and say, hey, you know what? When you're going through a tough time, we're here for you. You know, we'll have your back. We'll support you, whatever you go through. And I will be open and honest here about it. Sometimes it's just so fucking overwhelming because it's all you need is someone who you've grown up with, someone who truly knows you and truly knows the struggles you've had. And, you know, I'm getting ADHD, a proper, official, a diagnosis at the moment. And my mother could be such a help and understanding and being able to talk to me about it and saying, you know, that's something you had as a child.
Yeah.
And yet
Sorry.
she just offered you a little breadcrumb on your birthday, which, I mean, you told me you were glad to get, but so confused of how to react, because it was just such a juxtaposition of that you desperately needed your mom to just give you a hug. And she gave you a little crumb, but there's nothing in all the other days.
And that's the thing, like you get that one little opportunity, right?
Yeah.
You get one little message from your mum. And I was sitting there with my boyfriend and we saw the message come in. We were like, what? She's actually messaged me? Like utter disbelief, which no child should have to ever be so surprised to get a message from their mother. And I remember just like wanting to take that opportunity and pour my heart out to her and say, Mum, look, I've got a great life at the moment. This is what I've been able to achieve, and this is what I've done, and I've done this all on my own with no support from anyone. But I had to hold myself back and be like, actually, no, what do I say to her? What do I tell my mother? What should I say? Like, should I say anything? That's not how she's treated me. But should I act the same way as her or the way she's acted? It was such a mind fuck, and it triggered so many different things in me over multiple days. And I did reach back out to her and I did say thank you for your message and I really appreciate it. And just by the way, like I know you would like to know this. I'm doing fine. I've got a good job at the moment. I'm really enjoying doing my music and everything. But it's just this having to kind of like go through a heartbreak again and again and again and again, and it never stops, and that pain never goes away.
It's almost in a way easier when they don't reach out, as horrible as that sounds, because then you don't have that fresh heartbreak. And like you said, you wanted to tell her how you were doing because it's your mom. Even if she doesn't ask, please tell me how your life is going. Because, she might have had to show your dad the message. She does want to know. And then you think, how much do I tell her? Because I need to protect myself too. Yeah, but then there's that raw, it's my mom. I can tell her anything. Finally, I have a chance. She's opened up the door. Bah! You want to tell her everything. Mm-hmm. I so get it. And I'm sure so many watching will relate to you. And just that, those who have left, we all just want our moms.
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest thing to point out here too is that you can have a family that has a mom can have a different belief system than the father, which can have a different belief system than the children, and it can coexist in love and harmony. That does happen. So I think that's what's hard for us when we come out and experience the real world and we see this happening. We see families coexisting together with different belief systems. The love is still there. That's what is so hard for us, because they sit and they do all these podcasts trying to rebut everything that we put out on our podcast, but yet their words do not match any of their actions. And their separation rule that they have instilled for years and years and years and years is the actual cancer of this situation that you're talking about, Dawson. Is because your mom has utmost love for you. And the mind fuck was literally, how do you respond to this? Because you want to keep this going, but at the same time, you've gained so much of yourself. Then the nervous system is triggering, going off, fight, fawn, freeze, just going off, thinking, but we can't go back in here. Like, I need to preserve you, because if we go back into this, we're now reliving what it was like when we first left. So there's this whole other level of what your nervous system is trying to protect you from. At the same time, your heart is just yearning for a deep, intimate conversation with the one that gave birth to you. And I agree with Andrea that it is true. This is when I was going through the heart attack that my husband had, and he was waiting for a heart transplant. I had to cut my parents off. I could not deal with the phone calls that were coming in the morning, my mom crying. She wanted to be here with me. But instead of her being able to support me the way that she needed to support me, she was caught up in her system versus my system, right? Where she wanted to be, but she couldn't be. And in that was like, I needed to take something off my plate. Otherwise, I was not going to be able to give my husband what he needed. And I had to. I'm like, our two worlds can't walk hand in hand. They just simply can't. Because what I need right now is 110% of your energy with me, with my children, with what we're going through, and you can't give it. And instead, you're only being able to give me 2% of it. And that's like you say, Dawson, it's a mind fuck every single day. And when you simply do not have the emotional capacity to be able to jump those hoops, this is where the PBCC need to change. If they truly, truly are not a cult, we'll see these changes. We'll see that they have these heart-to-heart discussions with their members saying, you know what? You're allowed to go and have these heart-to-heart meetings with your children. You're allowed to sit down and eat with them. You're allowed to sit down and drink with them. You're allowed to do this, but we can still hold our difference of beliefs. That can happen. That can coexist. The thing is, because they're a cult and this system has been set up to be a cult, that doesn't happen. And so exactly the video that you posted that day, and it's why I asked you if I could share it, was because it literally is every person's email and message and information that I get given. Either that's people trying to leave, people who have just left, or people who've been out for 30 years. What you did in that video was what every single one of us suffers from.
Yeah.
And imagine like your mom, she know how she messaged you on your previous birthday as well. Clearly to her, your birthday is an opportunity to her where she feels permitted from her system to contact you. I've heard this from other members being gone much longer, which is you're glad she feels like she should or can, but it shouldn't only be that. Like that's too conditional.
Yeah.
And yet, Dawson, you know your mom is so loving and so warm and has so much more to say to you.
Yeah.
For there's, someone who I know very well, okay, had an offer from their mom years after they left. If you need anything, let us know. So he thought, okay, I'm going to file this away till I need something from my mom. He had surgery. He said, Mom, you know how you told me to reach out if I ever needed anything from you? Would you be able to help me after my surgery? She goes, sorry, I can't.
Yeah.
So it's like you say, the clash of the two systems.
Yeah. I do think though that this is where we need to challenge them, right? Like changes only come from when people become brave enough and courageous enough to challenge things. But I also caution that in the sense that you need to make sure that you have enough emotional regulation and you have enough groundedness in you to be able to handle that battle. I mean, if you're not in therapy, get a therapist. But these are the moments like what you experienced, Dawson, is had you not been going through such a kind of rough little patch right in that moment, you probably would have been able to challenge her a little bit. The thing is the change is going to come from us challenging our own parents, our siblings, and the family members around them, that if these podcasts are absolutely true in what they say, then our interaction with them should be a lot more pure. And that is not happening, especially if you're talking out. Everything still lines up and ticks every single box of a cult. And I won't stop calling a cult until you stop allowing these boxes to be ticked as a cult. But you're still ticking all these cult boxes, even though you're putting out propaganda that says the opposite. This is an example of a very cult-like behavior.
And it's an example of how it can throw someone who, as you say, Dawson, you're in a good place in your life, good job, relationship, and yet something like that, it kind of just rips it all open again and just fucks you up.
Absolutely.
And it's so unfair.
Yeah. And I always have this again and again. My therapist says this to me, my friends say this to me, that they're so amazed at how that I'm not this homeless person who's a drug addict on the streets. After everything, I've been through and coping with this whole mind fuck ever since. But the thing is, from my experience, once you've been through the cult and once you've lived that, you know that you have more to live for than what you've experienced. And that's the only thing that's kept me going since I've left, is knowing that I've deserved better.
Let's drop into that more, because this is a perfect way to explain. This is what those inside need to understand, that when you leave, there is this innate resilience that is born out of you. And every therapist I've ever been to has said the same to me. And many other people who have talked to me about their therapy sessions have said the same thing, that there's just this unspoken resilience that comes out of ex-members because of what they've endured. You don't go down the rabbit hole of what the brethren say is going to happen. Instead, there's this sense of freedom and this sense of, sure, we might go on a few drunken rages and we might go and experience a ton of things all at once, but you never allow yourself to completely go off the edge, because you are already off the edge inside there. And so in coming out, you get to rebuild. There's just this sense of like, I'm going to seize every moment. So let's talk about everything that you've experienced right now. I mean, Dawson, what you have accomplished this year thus far with your music career is incredible, absolutely incredible. If nobody that's listening to this has not gone and listened to his single, Guilt Trippin', go do it right now. I'll put the link below. You must listen to it. I mean, it's our driving song all the time. It's my song at the gym. It is the way that you articulate your pain into music is therapy that all of us needed.
Make sure you have the lyrics going.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. That's really kind of you. Oh, so much has happened, and I can't help but beam when I think about it, because of course, there's been some rough moments, when you grieving lost ones, but being able just like this, I can't explain the freedom of the feeling you have when that burden of the cult is just like lifted off your shoulders. I remember the first evening I was out and I felt that feeling of freedom. I felt this feeling of like being invincible, because I just knew now I can do whatever I want. I can be friends with whoever I want. I can chase the career I've dreamed of since a child. And that has literally been my life since day one of leaving. I have so many like really, really, really good, true friends around me. And yeah, most of them are girls, which like my mom can't wrap her head around, because she thinks like if I'm gay, but wait, you have friends who are gays. I get it, for people on the inside, you might not quite understand it, but you can just be friends with whoever you want. And I've done that through, for example, just going out on my own. And it's been like hard just having to, go out to a bar or whatever, but that's how I found friends, or going on apps for finding friends. Like, for example, Bumble, Best Friends. That's how I've met my best friends, people that have moved here from other countries that I'm trying to build up, new communities and new friendships. And, I went and got counseling on career counseling. I got someone to help me see what my opportunities are, my career path options. Okay, you could do this. Okay, you don't have a qualification. Okay, so first you need to start from square one. You need to do the basic qualifications in Switzerland. Okay, we've done that. And then you can do the next qualification. And then you can go on to do a bachelor's. And then you can do your master's. Okay, and then I want to do music. Okay, so I found a singing teacher who had a lot of experience in the music industry. And she's helped me, develop my vocal skills. And okay, this is how you can do it. Go to a songwriting camp, learn how to, the easier way to write songs, and producers. This is how you can find producers and make your own music and go out there. And friends who have helped me to travel the world and, have challenged me like, yeah, Dawson, go on a little trip on your own, try it. You don't know what it's going to do to you. And that experience and how that's changed me, seeing the world on my own, and seeing different cultures and poverty and stuff like that, has really opened my eyes to the fact that the whole concept of this cult is destroyed like that by just stepping foot outside of its walls and seeing the world for what it is. It isn't a crazy, fucked up, evil place. I mean, it is in some parts. We all know that. People in the cult know that as well.
That's everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
You have that in the cult, okay? It's fucked up in the cult. But out here, it's a beautiful world. It really is.
It
And
really
it's
is,
your
isn't it?
world. The world is your oyster. For anyone leaving, if you're doubting it, if you have any little part of you that's doubting whether that might be the right decision, that's fine. Have that doubt, but try it. Just try it. Just step out foot into the outside world, maybe for a month, maybe for 6 months, maybe for a year, and give it a go. And if it's nothing for you, that's fine. But give yourself that chance. I really, really would urge anyone inside, just give yourself that possibility, because you're not meant to get married in your early 20s and throw your life away with having children and having a huge house and responsibilities. Your 20s are where you find yourself. That's when you develop yourself. I mean, it's fine if that's what you want to do, and nothing against anyone who's done that, but give yourself that possibility.
And Dawson is a living example of somebody who leaves and despite feeling nervous is curious and doesn't stop trying to make friends and doesn't stop pushing himself to do new things. I mean, you inspire me, darling, all the time. You just don't give up. You're just like, nope, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to try and oh well. And that's such a key to leaving. Try things you're scared of and be curious. Don't let your mind stay in that small place. I want to say as well to anybody that's thinking of leaving and who has listened to Dawson's story, a big part of when you first leave is don't be afraid to make mistakes because they will happen. But in the Brethren, your life is so mapped out for you that making a mistake is absolutely monumental and it could wreck your life forever. And in the real world, making a mistake is not that big of a deal. You just pick yourself up and move on and just try not to get so knocked down by it.
Definitely. And on that, like, what is going to happen to you if it, like, what are they going to do to you? This is the biggest thing for me. Like, when I was leaving, I was so paranoid about what they were going to do to me or what my consequences were going to be, but there aren't any. And if you decide to go back, they will be like, okay, say sorry for a few things and that's fine. Like, there's no reason not to have that experience. Do you know what I mean?
I went back. I know. All you got to do is say sorry.
And the other thing is, don't be afraid of getting professional help. There's a reason why there's professionals out there. There's a reason why there's therapists. There's a reason why there's career counselors and financial counselors and everything. When you come out here and also don't be afraid to tell your story. That's what got me the friends I have today. Is I was out having a drink with someone. I'd be like, do you know what? I don't know how to tell you this. I'm just going to dive right in. I escaped a cult 4 weeks ago. Like I'm new to all this. And yeah, some people will get terrified of that and will run from you, but you will find people that truly have the best in mind for you and have your back for, what has it been, 5 years now. So what I can advise is just try it. Just try it. Save up a bunch of money before you leave. That's really important. Do a bunch of research, like find communities or groups of people that maybe have experienced loss or a bit trying to build up a new life and stuff like that. And the support will just come. Once it starts, it never stops. And oh my God, the train just keeps going faster and faster and getting further and further away from the place you left. And the scenery, this is how I've been helped to view life as a river. You're flowing through a river and the scenery changes and it's never the same, right? And there will be dark patches and there will be rainy patches and there will be sunny patches and there might be waterfalls, but it's all part of the journey. And it's all so beautiful and so inspiring. And that's what life is meant to be like. The world is dark enough as it is. And heaven will come when it comes. Worry about that then. But live your life now and live who you truly are now, because you'll never have that possibility again. You have one life.
That's a life that you can give yourself choice in, right?
Exactly.
When you're in the PBCC, choice is very, very limited. And you don't have a relatability. So I agree with Dawson and how he says, try it so that you have something to compare to. But I would give it more than a month. I always say do things in threes. Like give it 3 months, but 3 core months, right? 3 hard months of really trying to be open-minded. I think that's the biggest thing that we have to learn when we leave the cult is what does open-minded look like? And our bodies, because they've been stuck in a cult, the nervous system takes a long time to thaw out to be able to feel comfortable with those choices. Those choices are not evil. Those choices are God-given. And you should be allowed to be able to have whatever choice you want to have in this life that you've been given.
So I've written this new song called Let Me Breathe, and it's basically about this feeling of suffocation you experience in the cult. And what we've also done is we've gotten the voices of 15, 20 other fellow survivors from the same cult to put their breathing in on the song, and we've used the breathing to like create the beat of the song, and you'll listen, you'll hear it afterwards. I just wanted to read out some of the lyrics though. So I start off talking about the 4 walls that you've put me in and how there's no room just to take a breath and breathe. And the controlling world that you've built, it's suffocating me. And it's directed at Bruce Hales, right? So I talk about how he's done it on purpose. He's starving us of air in a toxic enclosure, and we all bow down to the knees of a famous, evil stranger. Man of God was his label, a self-centered, narcissistic angel, a man so loved, but he never gave a fuck when someone would scream out, "Let me breathe."
Wow.
And to any insiders, that is the reality. He does not care. He does not care about who you are, how you're feeling, your life, your success. It's about him. Anything you do to benefit him, that's when he will maybe care a little bit about you. But the rest of the time, you're made to feel like you're suffocating. That's why so many of you drink so much alcohol and have no free time, because that would allow you to have time to realize what's going on and that you don't feel okay. And once you leave the cult, suddenly there will be a moment when you will be like, and you'll take a gasp of air and you'll realize how long you've been tensed up inside and you've been suffocating and not being able to breathe. And the next part of the song, I go on to say how he's calling it a community that's built up by love, money, and family. But he's forgotten about loyalty, and he's broken up homes and memories. And what a tragedy that it's a cult they're disguised by, with everyone wrapped around his finger and erasing names if his rules aren't abided. He's built up his kingdom by brainwashing men and innocent children, and that you're up his ass and you never daring to speak up and scream, "Let me breathe." So the song won't actually be available on streaming platforms until roughly end of May, but we'll add a snippet in here for you guys.
Early viewing.
So here's the song.
I cannot wait for it to come out.
These 4 walls you've put me in, there's no room to take a breath and breathe. This controlling world you build, it's suffocating me. I can't talk. Hey, but you've done it on purpose, starving us of air in a toxic enclosure. We all bow down to the knees of a famous evil stranger. Man of God was his label, a self-centered narcissistic angel. A man so loved, but he never gave a fuck when someone would scream out, "Let me breathe, let me breathe." Whoa, choking on the words that are beating in my chest, choked by the hands that he put around my neck. You wouldn't even care if I dropped down dead. I can't breathe.
Stay tuned this spring for the full release of Let Me Breathe.
When I first heard that song, like the rough draft, I got shivers. I was like, oh my gosh.
Wow. Congratulations, Dawson. Absolutely incredible. Dawson,
Absolutely.
Andrea, I am so grateful for you guys coming on again and just expanding on your story. I know that the people inside are going to be loving it. To Bruce Hales, man, you have such a shit show in your living room right now. And I sure hope you have enough shovels to shovel it out. And just realize you were the one that put the shit in your living room. It wasn't us. Good luck in cleaning it up. Until next time, everyone, much love to you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. How can you support Get a Life podcast? We are currently raising funds for this legal lawsuit against Cheryl and the Get a Life podcast. Please check out the GoFundMe link in the description of this episode. Thank you to everyone who has donated. You can donate internationally via PayPal at www.paypal.me/getalifepodcast. Or you can scan the QR code on your screen that takes you to our GoFundMe. Every donation helps keep this project alive. If you are in a high-demand religious group and need help, please go to oliveleaf.network. To share your story or be a guest on the show, email info.getalife@proton.me. You can find all our Get a Life merchandise on our website at www.getalife.net. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to Get a Life, and comment.